How's it going, everyone? Welcome and thank you for stopping in. Today I have a little different of a video planned for you guys. We are going to be going over how knife companies and knife manufacturers are betting against us. They are betting against you, they are betting against me, the knife community, the expert knife collector, all the way down to the guy who may just buy a handful of knives or less throughout the year. And I may not hit on everything that I would like to. I may jump around a little bit during this discussion or this topic, but I'm going to do my best to hit on each topic that I want and to stay on that said topic. There is a lot to go over and a lot to cover. This may be a little of a longer video. I will try to keep it as short and concise as I can. And I'm going to try not to single out any one company or get into bashing on any one particular company, but there will be certain companies that are mentioned during the video just to basically drive some points home. And I'm also not implying that every single knife company in the world falls under these topics of discussion. As a matter of fact, I would like to bring up a few companies that are trying to do the right thing. They are not looking to go through the easy way. They're not looking for an easy way out. They're not looking to get one over on you as a knife consumer or the knife community as a whole. As a matter of fact, they are very transparent about the whole process of the making of the knife all the way down to the spec sheet. And one company that really comes to mind is Hogue. Hogue is an American company employing Americans, and they are doing a phenomenal job when it comes to knife manufacturing, customer relations. They have a very good reputation when it comes to listening and applying consumer feedback, knife community feedback. They are giving us honest specifications of the knife, and those are the things that really matter when you are consumed by the knife company and what you expect when you are buying a knife. They implement changes that we as knife consumers want, as a knife community want. Anything that we have issue with, they try to change. They have even went so far as to limit the amount of hardware on a given knife, which is this one. The Deca version 1 had multiple or many more screws in the scales. They came out with a newer version with less hardware. They also put out a steel, and the HRC wasn't quite up to the expectation of the knife community, of the knife buyers. And what did Hogue do? They went back to the drawing board and they changed it. Hogue is a prime example of what we should all want knife companies to be, what we should want them to do. And I love Hogue for what they stand for. So moving on, I would like to try and keep my thoughts composed and the subjects of this topic in order, and that may not happen. I will do my best to keep this as structured and organized as possible. So let's get into it. One of the major issues that I have over my time in the knife community realized and digested time and time again is that knife companies will neglect anything and everything that they can get by us. If it will get by us and does get by us, they will continue doing it, especially if it's something that is intentional. They will not just let it be known that they screwed up and that there was an issue and then let us know that they are correcting it. Very rarely does that ever happen. I think one reason also why it has gotten easier for companies to, in a sense, cheat us are because of the mass amounts of knives that are released every day, every week, every month. It is astronomical. It is insane how many new knives get released on a monthly basis. On top of all that, a major attraction now to knives is many knife consumers are obsessed with the action, the fidgetability of the knife. Consumers are focused on that, the action, the fidgetability, which has become a deal breaker for many in a sense. If it doesn't have good action, then you might as well just toss it out. And I feel like certain companies believe that if they give that smooth opening action, that drop shut action, it aids them in us looking past any issues that there might be with that knife. And all of that leads me into one of the ways that they bet against us. They bet that we won't use our shiny new knife enough to know that there even is an issue. If they can make it fidgety and they can make it smooth, that will keep a major majority of knife buyers from ever learning of any other issues that there might be. Companies or knife makers who make ultra expensive knives believe that those knives will not be used hard enough for anyone to ever learn of certain issues, or that the steel might be soft. Guys who buy very expensive knives handle them with kid gloves, never really knowing that knife is capable or not capable of doing what knives do. They are not being used. So in a sense, I believe that those knives could be some of the knives that are cheated the most. Not every one, and that's what I'm trying to get across here, is I'm not talking about every knife company ever, and I'm not necessarily nailing this to one company. And the one example that I can give that might make a lot more sense to people or to you guys is that if we're talking about pistols, for instance, and somebody buys a $1,500 or $2,000 pistol, which in that sense, for a pistol, that's pretty expensive. That's getting up there in price. And a certain company who makes pistols in that price range is Kimber. They have had so many issues because nowadays people are starting to test those pistols. But before, as of late, companies like that could get away with skimping on different components of that pistol or what have you. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but they were never used enough for anyone to ever know there was an issue. It was basically a showpiece. It sat up in a cabinet, a display case, and it didn't get used. And that is a huge way that these companies are betting against us. They're cheating us on the product that they are selling us. And so getting back on topic, and that I would like to talk about a little bit more in depth, is companies, knife manufacturers, knife makers that are not sticking with proper protocol on their own heat treatments. They are downright going against the recommended protocol that steel performs at its highest ability at. And I would like to keep this as basic as possible, not get too intricate with any of this. Try to make it as understandable as possible. If it's someone who is new or what have you, not everyone has been consumed by the knife community for the last year or the last couple of years or what have you. But for an example, MagnaCut, a recent steel that was created by someone who specializes in metallurgy, who knows what the steel needs in order to perform at its best. There are actually companies and knife makers who are basically downright going against what has been tested, what has been proven, and what is the protocol for that steel. Not only are they going against the intended protocol for that steel, they are using us as guinea pigs to buy these knives with improper heat treatments, and then when it gets found out about, we are the bad guys in a sense. When it is brought to the attention, we are the bad guys in this whole situation. And it's not right. It's not the way that it should be. And steel is used in all kinds of different items across the world. Imagine if a car company went against standard protocols for the treatment of the steels used in the frame of the car, for instance, and they knowingly did that and they still proceeded with it. There would be all kinds of issues, from the consumers having issue with it to the vehicles having major issues, recalls, all kinds of different issues. And it should be not looked at any different for a knife, especially when you are paying a premium price for that said knife. And then the knife companies or the knife makers want to give us excuses after that as to why the steel is being run the way it is. Oh, they need to do certain testing, or they're not sure about this, or they're not sure about that. The steel has already been tested. It has already been diagnosed. It already has the proper way it should be finished and treated. It has a protocol. If these companies want to do these kinds of tests that they are talking about, or they want to do whatever it might be as far as testing certain steels or what have you, then they should be doing that on their own dimes, not ours. That is one of the main ways and the biggest ways companies bet against us. They think that they can run these steels at whatever they feel like they think they should do them at, use these premium steels, and ran at a subpar heat treat and protocol, and then charge us top dollar for these knives, or even more. Then they are betting on the fact either A, we won't find out, or B, we will never use the knife long enough or hard enough to know that there's something wrong. And that is where these companies and these knife makers are wrong. They might be able to get away with it for a certain amount of time, but eventually they will get found out about, and they will get exposed, and it will be an issue with many of us. And it's only a matter of time. If you are going to cheat the knife community, the people of the knife community, you will get found out. It's only a matter of time. Not only has the knife company, or the knife community, grown exponentially over the last year, let alone the last couple of years. It is quadrupled times 2 over the last couple of years. It is insane how much growth the knife community, the EDC community has had over the last couple years. And from being in the knife community for quite a while at this point, I have come to know a lot of guys. I have watched content of a lot of guys. There are a ton of guys and girls who are extremely smart. They are well studied, and people have the ability to figure these things out. We also have people who are very smart, have the machines to do certain testing on these knives. And it is just coming full circle that anyone who is trying to cheat us, who is trying to bet against us, is going to eventually lose. And like I said, I don't want to single any one company out here. If you know, you know. There are companies out there who have deliberately ran certain steels soft and still sold them, giving us excuses as to why they did that and still sold them. Now, I don't want to bash on Fox Knives of Maniago, Italy, but it is not a secret. They were known for running M390 at a very soft Rockwell. They just were. They were not running it up to what M390 should be ran at. Medford, Hinderer, these companies, now, some of them have blatantly said this is the excuse that they gave us, and it was this, that, or this. Now, Fox Knives, have they turned a corner and started doing things the proper way? I hope so. From everything that I hear, Fox Knives has turned the corner, turned the page, and they are starting to do things the proper way with the proper protocols. And it's just, I hope that they are, because someone like me who doesn't have a machine to test these and to know, I basically have to trust that they are. And there's a part of me that does trust that, they are doing the right thing. But then there's another part of me that thinks, they are cutting corners and they aren't doing it the way that they should be. And that leads me into another company that, for the most part, they get it right. Spyderco. Okay? Now, yes, they have manufacturing in China, Taiwan, but they have a massive manufacturing company in Golden, Colorado, in America. And just for instance, 15V, a brand new steel that has just come out, that is just now being used in pocket knives. Not that this is 15V, but it's M390. And I have full faith and trust that this is where it should be. But Spyderco, they might not have the best customer service. No, that is one notch against Spyderco. But when it comes to heat treating the steels the way that they should be treated, if the higher ups at Spyderco, if the guys who deal with the treatment of the steels don't know the proper, precise protocols on how to treat that steel, for instance 15V, they bring the proper people in to make sure that that steel is getting the treatment that it needs to perform at its highest ability. And I applaud Spyderco for doing that. Even though they have shitty customer service, I applaud Hogue for making changes and for being transparent. Not that Spyderco is the most transparent company in the world, but they will let you know that this is what the steel is, this is the process that it went through, this is the HRC of that steel, this is what it's supposed to be at, this is what we did it at. And I fully applaud that. You know, that is amazing. Now, we went off on a little bit of a tear, and there was at least one other thing. There were several other things I wanted to cover, and maybe I can cover it in a later video. But one of the other things that I wanted to cover was, as far as knife companies betting against us, okay, is this most recent deal with button lock and plunge locks. I'm not sorry to bring it up, okay? When you buy a $300 knife that is a button lock and the knife cannot be tapped on its spine without failing, I'm not talking about smashing it into a rock on its spine and then it closing. I'm talking about just tapping it on its spine and then it closing. That is an issue when that happens. Something is not right with the geometry of that plunge lock, with the tang of that knife. And it wasn't just my knives. You know, I tested Protex, I tested Kaisers, Civivis, CJRBs, Vosteeds. I tested a ton of button locks. And although maybe 65% of them passed, another 35 or even a little more, I bet it was like 40 to 60. 40% of them failed. And some of them were higher end, more expensive button locks. We're not talking about $20, $30 button locks here. You know, I think the cheapest one out of the group was at least $60, you know, $70, which is not nothing. That's a big deal. And I don't know if that was if now I have to believe not all of that was known, you know, before it was sent out. But if I'm making a knife with a button lock, you would think that they would be tested. You know, yeah, you want to test all of the normal things, but because you are using a plunge lock, you would think there would be duress put on those knives in at least a certain manner to see if that lock is going to hold up. We have people in the knife community who were using certain knives and doing certain cuts. They weren't doing anything necessarily that they shouldn't have been. They were making cuts, and that plunge lock, that button lock, actually failed, closing on their hand and cutting them. Some worse than others, some not so bad, but irregardless of that, the knife still failed. And I think we're in a day and age now with social media. A lot of eyes are on these knives. There's a lot of people who maybe a few years ago wouldn't have been using these knives as hard as there are people using them today. You know, and the information gets around very quickly nowadays. So if there's an issue, it can be circulated around very quickly. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people can be notified within, a 24-hour period. And that is a lot of people that can be notified very quickly. And I don't want to pick on Vosteed because they are trying to change things and do the right things. They went from a button lock to a crossbar lock in one of their knives, trying to fix the issues. But they didn't only put out one button lock, but they put out two button locks back to back, two different models that both had very, very weak plunge locks, to the point where just a slight tap on the spine was making it close. That is a huge issue. And I think, it goes back to the action and all of that, the fidgetiness of the knives. They are hoping that making a knife with fidgetability and good action is going to keep everyone at bay. And that's just not the case. There are people out there who are going to hard use these knives, who are going to test these knives. There are people out there who are going to test these steels. Are they making enough cuts to meet what they should be meeting? Is the HRC proper? And it's going to get found out. It's only a matter of time. I don't want to keep going because we're already going pretty long. But I just wanted to make this video to bring some awareness and for you to just keep your eyes open. And, if you haven't used that knife, that special knife, and I'm not saying use that $1,000 gifted knife, custom knife, and run it through a tree. But, if you have a couple $100 knife, get out there and use it. Make sure everything's working properly. I'm not saying keep track of how many cuts you run through cardboard, but just get it out there and use it. See what it's about. And I'm sick of these companies trying to take advantage of me, trying to take advantage of other people in the knife community, in the knife world, period. And that was the whole point of this video, just to bring some awareness, to the fact that knife companies are betting against us, and the simple fact is they will lose. If you're still here, thank you. I love you. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you on the next one.